In this video today, I'm going to walk you through step by step a recent project that I did for a local rigging company. They brought this hardtop in to me that had all sorts of holes, old outrigger mounting locations, screw mounting locations, and they want all the holes filled, the bottom painted ice blue, and the top painted white with non-skid. So to get this project started, I'm using my Bosch 6-inch DA sander here with a little bit of 80 grit. And I'm just using this to knock down the old non-skid and rough up the surface just to get it prepped for the upcoming fillers and primers. So I really like this Bosch 6-inch sander. I've actually owned this for about 6 years and it's been flawless. The really nice thing about this is it's priced just under 300 bucks. And it's got this turbo feature on it that you can make the sander cut a little bit faster by making it spin more. So then I move on to using my 3/8 wide Makita mini belt sander. So I use this belt sander and the 1 1/8 inch sander very often in my shop. It's usually my go-to if I have to do some detailed grinding like this. So here I'm just going around all the areas that I need to patch and grinding out the top layer of the glass. And then here I'm using the DA sander with some 60 grit just to taper the edge. So this taper here where you see the grind marks, that's where we're gonna taper in the chop strand mat on this repair. So here I'm just solvent washing the top and just getting it ready to do the chop strand. But the thing I'm gonna do first here is I'm gonna use some packing tape and I'm going to cover all the repair holes with the packing tape. So when I flip it over, the resin and chop strand doesn't fall through the holes and make a mess of the bottom of the T-top. So moving over to this part, now I have this area prepped. Well, you can see I flipped the top over. So now I'm working on the bottom side, the side that's going to be ice blue. And I'm just laying in several layers of 1.5 ounce chop strand mat, just bringing the repair up, filling in that taper and making the resin sit just a little bit proud of the surface. So then we can come back with the belt sanders and the grinders and the DA sanders and bring that resin back down level to the top of the T-top. All right, so just cleaning up the tape around the area, trying to keep my work area as clean as possible. And then, like I said, we're just gonna grind off this dry area of the chop strand first. And then we'll just start taking the resin down little by little. The belt sander works nice here because you can get the glass pretty much as flush as you possibly can by laying the belt sander flat and instead of using the tip. So the next step is going to be using some dye chem mixed about 50-50 with denatured alcohol. So a lot of people use acetone here instead of the alcohol. I like the alcohol because it doesn't evaporate as quickly. When you do this 50-50 with acetone, the acetone pretty much dries so fast that, being that it's Florida and super hot in my shop, the acetone evaporates almost immediately and it makes it hard to lay out the dye chem. So here, this is the first round of doing the guide coat, and I just wanted to try to highlight all the low spots in this hardtop because it was just so floppy. It was hard for me to tell what parts of it were floppy and what parts were actually needed to be repaired. So anywhere where you see the darker blue spots, that's the die chem that's falling into the low spots of the top. So here I'm just working like a 2 foot area, trying to keep the DA sander as flat to the surface as possible. If you stand it up on edge, it's not, the guide coat isn't going to work. You need to keep the whatever it is that you're sanding with either blocking by hand or your machine. You need to keep it perfectly flat so that it has the little pinholes here that are filled with ink, and it'll show you the areas that you need to fix. So here I'm just using the belt sander again to go around and dig out all the areas where there were screw holes. So remember, I put the packing tape on the bottom so you can see the packing tape there kind of fills in the hole and keeps the resin from dropping through. And then I'm going to have cured resin on the bottom of this that I have to sand off. So I just want to try to avoid that mess. So there I'm using the DA sander just to taper the gel coat in a little bit, and I went around and put chop strand mat on all the repairs on this side. So again, just using the mini belt sander to knock off the area that was tapered, and then switching to the DA sander again on turbo mode to bring it back down, trying to get it slowly flush with the original surface. So here you can see the small little dig marks from the belt sander. So now we're going to go to an epoxy fairing compound. So I'm using the Alex Seal 202 lightweight epoxy fairing compound here. I really love this epoxy fairing putty. It comes in two variations. I have it available at boatcrafterscompany.com. One is a fast activator. It dries in 4 hours, and the other is a standard activator, and that dries in about 12 hours. So here, after I sanded all the epoxy, I did another guide coat, so I skipped ahead real fast there. So now I'm moving on to the first coat of high build epoxy primer. So this will be the first of probably 2 or 3 layers of high build. And now we'll just use the high build epoxy primer just to get all the remaining low spots.
All right, just finished shooting PPG high build epoxy primer on it. And whenever you shoot the primer for the first time, it always shows you the issues that you have. So the big problem with this hardtop is it's super floppy. So see how it just flops around? That makes it very challenging to properly block sand it, because you really can't put a straight block on it and get good results, because if you push down on the surface with the block, all that happens is this thing just flops around. Cross my fingers that once this cures and I guide coat it, that it looks a lot better than it does now, but won't really be able to tell until I get the sandpaper on it tomorrow. All right, so back in the shop the next day, and all the epoxy is cured up, so it's looking pretty good. It did fill most of those little divots, but there's still some that I can see. Like there's one right there. But now I'm going to guide coat this, knock it down with 80 grit, and see what it looks like. Hopefully there's enough primer on there to where it will eliminate some of those little pinholes. And we have to do another round of high build, and that's what we need to do. So no sense in painting this if there's imperfections in it.
All right, so after doing another round of guide coat on the bottom, now all the repairs on the top side are getting grinded smooth, and I decided to use a vinyl ester fairing putty on this because I'm trying to get all this work done in the same day, and if I use the epoxy, I'd have to let it sit overnight. So
All right, so I just finished DA sanding all of this vinyl ester putty. So came out really good. A lot of these feel really smooth. I talked to the customer. We're not going to put a bunch of time into the top because nobody sees the top, but I am going to fix some of these low spots that are going to show up, and I'm going to do that using a very lightweight glazing putty, and that's just going to fill in some of the minor imperfections, like some of these pinholes in the glass, things like that. I'm not overly concerned about it because the paint that I'm going to use on this is a very high solids paint, and that's going to cover a lot of the imperfections. So I'm only going to fix the more major low spots, and then I'm going to sand that, and then we're going to go right to getting the non-skid on this, and then hopefully by the end of the day I'll be able to put the white top coat, and then tomorrow it'll be cured and I can flip it over and I can start getting the bottom ready for ice blue. All right, got the lightweight glazing putty on there. Tried to pull it as clean as I could. Just trying to try to avoid having any real high spots, because then it's just more and more sanding. Like this edge right here, I would have liked to try to avoid that, but So this is going to cure really, really fast. It probably cure to sand in less than 20 minutes. Then I can knock this down, and then I'm going to get it ready for non-skid. All right, so I think this is going to be the final round of fairing on this top. Not trying to get crazy with this top. It's the top of a T-top. Once it's on the boat, nobody's going to see it, but it is very, very smooth. So I'm just washing it off with a little bit of water. I was going to guide coat it again just to kind of highlight any of the low spots, but I think it's pretty good. Just going to move on now with the non-skid and get this non-skidded and top coated today so that I can let it sit overnight.
All right, so there's two different ways that you can lay down non-skid. You can do your paint work first, then tape off the paint and shoot the non-skid, or you can shoot the non-skid first and then paint over the top of it. So I'm going to shoot the non-skid first and then top coat over the top of it. So what I'm going to be using is a PPG Amercoat 370, which is a high build fast cure epoxy primer. It's a 4-to-1 mix, and I'm going to be loading it into my gel coat dump gun with a pretty wide tip on it. And I'm going to add, so I'm using pumice for my non-skid, so I added some soft grit and medium grit pumice, and I'm just going to mix it right into the epoxy primer. So you can see the pumice right here. Just going to pour it right into the epoxy primer and mix it around until I'm really just eyeballing it. When you put the non-skid or the pumice into the paint, it's really hard to tell like what density is in there, but I just kind of try to mix it up so it looks like milky sandpaper paint. And then I'm putting it in my gel coat dump gun, and you can see here I'm just like misting the epoxy primer with the pumice mixed into it over the surface. The epoxy primer is white, but I'm not trying to cover the surface. So you see at the end here, you're still going to be able to see the repairs through the epoxy primer. I'm not really concerned about that because in the next step, I'm going to be shooting the paint right over the top of this non-skid that I just put down. So you can see here I got the edges taped up, and you can see the repairs through the epoxy primer. But it's not really important because when you get down low and look at it, you can see that the texture of the non-skid is consistent over the surface. So now I'm going to top coat this with a polysiloxane paint. It's a 90% volume solids paint. It's a very, very thick paint. It's a PPG PSX 700. It's extremely, extremely, extremely durable, and it has extreme UV resistance. You just wash this off. You don't really have to wax it or do anything to it. And I'm going to shoot this right over the top of the non-skid, and I'm shooting this out of my 2-quart KB3 DeVilbiss pressure pot gun, and I'm using a 2.5 millimeter tip on my gun. So the PPG PSX 700 is a very high solids paint, and you only typically need one coat of it. It's very rare that you need more than one coat unless you're shooting over a dark primer, but you can see here that it's very, very glossy. It lays out really, really nice, and I just top coated all the non-skid and as well the sides.
So the bottom is cured. I didn't film it. You just have to take my word for it. So I put paper on the bottom, and I put padding on the sawhorses, and I actually flipped it over by myself. I'm surprised that I was able to do it. So I'm just getting ready to shoot some finish primer on here. My sanding is all done. I had some marks from the sawhorses that I had to just kind of clean up a little bit, but nothing major. And I went ahead and taped the edges. So a little trick here. So I want the edge of this to be, so this is going to be ice blue. I want the edge to be ice blue as well, so that when you're looking up, you don't see a white stripe around the outside. So I just took tape and taped it up over the edge, and then I took this little piece here and bent it back so it just holds the tape back, so the paint should fall nicely right on this edge and then not get on the side edge. So just gonna get this cleaned and prepped and get my gun set up to shoot finish primer.
So it was at this point in editing this video that I found out that I lost the rest of the footage of me painting the ice blue on this top. So I apologize. I'm going to have to cut this tutorial video short. You just have to take my word for it that I did shoot ice blue on the bottom. It came out great and I delivered to the customer. So here you can see a few pictures. Thanks guys for watching.